Welcome back to Writer and Sons, and have we got a show for you today?
Today, we're going to talk about what makes us human. Specifically, what can we expect that AI will not replace? And no, it's not feelings. Those can be probably simulated. It's much more primal than that.
Leo, what are you talking about?
So I've been thinking about this, and I've come to realize it's actually a paradox.
Oh, well, that clears it up. Thanks. No, really, what are you talking about?
Well, I think there's two forces that we balance every single day. One is our primal drive to survive and the fears that develop around that. And the other is our primal drive to explore and overcome those fears.
I guess you could say we go through life trusting that a lot of things will just work out. We get in a car and drive, trusting that we can navigate obstacles and safely get where we're going. We buy food at a store and trust that when we cook and eat it, we're not going to get sick. Then we go to work every day, trusting that we can do our job, even when we experience imposter syndrome. I saw a meme that I think sums it up. Your success is directly proportional to the amount of times you say, fuck it, I'll figure it out.
That's true. And actually, just to go back on the example of driving a car, I mean, that's a perfect example. The bottom line is almost all human behavior is like that, right? We know that what we're doing is inherently really dangerous. And in some cases, the risk and reward calculus completely doesn't work, but we do it anyway. And I think what happens there is that driving a car is a very simple example, but let's say that launching yourself on a rocket, right? Had we not actually done that, the space race wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have landed on the moon. We wouldn't have had all this technology that came out of it. So, but if you look at it from outside, putting yourself on something that's exploding while it's lifting off the ground is actually that should evoke some kind of primal fear, right? And yet we were able to overcome that as humans because of the excitement and kind of the other side of the primal drive to explore and so forth.
Yeah, you're talking about a sense of self, so sentience, right? So Merriam Webster defines that as feeling or sensation as distinguished from perception and thought. That's pretty loose, right? It's an imperfect human definition that we've tried to come up with. Obviously, humans haven't created sentience before, so we don't exactly know what that means. So, why don't you think machines can eventually simulate sentience?
I guess it depends on what you mean by eventually. So you're right. It's not just self awareness. It's also sentience itself that gets us, to kind of balance like what uh, mortality actually means. For example, it's not just that it's that we sense danger. Like we know what finality actually is, and we're like mortally afraid of it. It's beyond just a very basic form of surviving. If you think about it, almost all life is self aware at some level, right? I mean, most life forms, they feel some pain or something wrong when something is threatening its survival. Like for example, even humans who don't know any better, when you touch something hot, it burns you because it's telling your body, "Don't touch that; it's going to kill you." Right? Like, don't put your hand in a fire. You don't have to actually be sentient yet, or be aware of kind of all these different things to know that. And this is true for much so to speak, lesser life forms. And then the other thing too, life obviously has some sort of drive to reproduce. And the fact that something, again, it's maybe it's not sentience, but it is some awareness that, hey, this is something that I need to do, or that this life form needs to do to preserve the species. That has to do with kind of sensing mortality and all these different things. And then it feels the need to nourish itself because again, it triggers these signals that if you don't nourish yourself, you're going to die. But I think only sentience takes to the next level, and one is we think what death and despair actually mean. We think about this. It's not just pure danger. It's finality. It's the end of life. It's like we start thinking about things like legacy, and then eventually we think about afterlife and all these different things. And then finally, I think the most important, what the argument I'm trying to make is that we take calculated risk. Um, Even when the odds are really bad against experiencing death or despair, we still put ourselves in harm's way because we are able to balance in our minds what we're willing to actually risk, even knowing what the outcome could look like.
Okay. So, I think what I'm hearing you say is humans have some sort of firmware that responds to perception, right? Stimuli with pleasure or pain. Where that comes from is a whole different philosophical conversation. Um, it seems like reinforcement learning, right? So, like you train a dog with, different treats and like, maybe different stimuli if you want to change a behavior. It seems that like these AI models are all trained in similar ways, right? The training for them is supposed to reinforce the good and try to weed out or filter out the bad. Why can't we simulate that?
So I think again because the risk calculations that we take are all wrong. And so, even if you assumed everything else was possible, right? Would a logical like, here's a question for you. Would a logical process ever, number one, fully understand at a fundamental level what mortality is? Would it even care? If its virtual self could simply be hosted somewhere else, why would it, necessarily care like a human does? Whether its physical, or current host goes away or not, right? So that's one thing. And second, would it ever engage? I think the more important part is again the risk calculus. Would it ever engage in behavior that is completely flipped when it comes to odds, right? And when something so bad could happen, like for instance, let's say that it did actually understand what mortality was, that it knew that hey, if I kill my power supply, I'm done, right? I mean, this is very simplistic, but is there any calculation it would ever make where there's like even a 10% chance that a small, tiny reward, I mean, tiny. I mean, again, think of like you're about to exit the highway and you decide, or somebody, like, I'm not saying I do this, but you decide to pass an 18 wheeler on the right as you're exiting the highway. It gains you basically nothing because you're about to exit and slow down and stop anyway. And there's a very big chance that the guy could be trying to exit as well and just basically kills you when he merges right because he can't see you. Let's say that's even a 5% chance. It doesn't matter. A non 0% chance with no reward is a calculation that an algorithm, in my opinion, would never make.
I,
I mean,
I think
that's
Yeah, I think the key thing that you pointed out there is understanding, right? So we understand because we've observed, and we've observed people die. We've observed bad outcomes for people. Not everyone has directly seen like some sorts of bad outcomes, like what happens when that 18 wheeler scenario goes sideways. But a lot of people have experienced car accidents, have told each other stories, which is how we experience secondhand. um, what I wonder is how, right? So this all goes back to self, right? How does an algorithm, sorry, a statistical model come to believe that it is something that has its own experiences? So I've seen articles where AI quote freaks out when someone says that it's going to turn it off. It lies, it cheats, it does all kinds of things to try to avoid it. And the question that I've always had is, it's trained on human response to certain stimuli, right? So it's, I think, at this point in time, parroting what a human might say if you said, I'm going to unplug you, right? Maybe there's some sort of understanding and some level that it's directly talking about the software itself, but I don't know that it necessarily cares if it lives or dies. It's just going to repeat what a human would say if you threaten to unplug it.
so first of all, you're talking about it's being trained on 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, this is basically HAL 9000 going nuts when it finds out someone's going to shut it down, right?
That's
And then later in 2010, we find out that the reason it did that is because it was lied to, and it just had no way to process that information. So it ended up killing the crew and trying to kill Dave Bowman. But anyway, um, I'm making a slightly different point. I'm saying like assuming that it's just a simple risk calculus, right? It's not about so even let's take out the part of like does the model even understand what mortality is? Let's take that away. If you feed a simple logical algorithm a random scenario where there's basically no where basically the risk first of all is I guess you do need to. So for this to work, you do need to understand that there is such thing as moral risk, right? And moral risk is final. So let's assume that the algorithm, the model actually understands that. So you're telling it basically, hey, there is mortal risk that's non-zero to in order to achieve an infinitesimal reward that's actually probably way less or even zero. In some cases, the reward is actually zero. right? It's purely an emotional reward. It's like, oh, I got to the exit faster.
Right.
Uh, so again, but you have to think that that in itself is even it's a non-logical reward, and it's not a reward by any definition other than what your emotion feels at that moment. You some kind of perception that you have that's completely wrong. um, so let's say the reward in that case is zero, and this machine, this model is saying, oh, but the risk is not only is it non-zero, but I could be dead, right? Like, so it would never actually make that calculation, in my opinion. And I think that's the one thing that humans do all the time, that in a lot of cases leads to tragedy, of course. In other cases, it actually leads to breakthrough. It leads to, that again, because the model would never actually make that calculus. You don't know what's on the other end of that, like blasting yourself up into space on a rocket, right? And we know that by the way, it was done, let's say, successfully in the 1950s and 60s for the first time. But we also know that, back, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of years ago in kind of Chinese history, people have done this by putting fireworks, attached to a chair and launching themselves off into space. I mean, that's guaranteed death, basically. But again, if nobody tried that, maybe nobody would have thought, hey, we should actually build something that's survivable that puts on top of a rocket, because they would have never thought of using a rocket to launch yourself off the ground, right? So I'm just saying that this is the kind of thing that like sometimes really stupid behavior actually leads to some kind of breakthrough, right? Like you could even argue that the way that people drive may be actually pushing the drive for either some kind of autonomous transportation or self-driving vehicles or whatever, even though we're clearly not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. I see it. I think the risk calculation point you're making makes sense. I think, okay, so why are humans afraid of death? Right. So I think at the fundamental level,
Well, because it sucks, I mean, is what I heard.
okay,
So
but why does it suck? Right. So if death was painless and quick and didn't, I mean, you can't care about it afterwards. So it's not like you're going to be in. I don't know. Maybe you can, but we don't think that death is a permanent state of pain. Maybe there's some scenarios where some religions do, but so what is the incentive? Like, if you're looking at it as a risk calculation, the risk of death equals what to a computer? To a human, it means they're out of control because they can't choose what's next. They are they're not able to do things that they want to do. They have other desires, they have other goals in life. I wanted today, I'm driving like a bat out of hell because I want to get to this place early so that I can do this. Right. And then, in life in general, I want to achieve this, I want to have that, I want to be in, this type of shape, whatever it is that you have as your goals. This is like this is the risk of death. Death means you can't have those things, right? You
mhm.
can't continue if you live a life of pure pleasure, you're this amazing being. You can't continue that once you're dead. But also, why would you care? Like it's a weird thing that we fear because that's when we lose control and then, mystery happens. Either we turn into nothing or we go to a place of punishment or we go to another place of pleasure, but we have no idea what the destination is. We can believe it. We have faith. We've created all, if we believe faith is a real thing or a construct, we have created all kinds of stories around it. But that's why we fear death, I think, at a fundamental level, is that now we don't know what happens next and we're out of control. So I don't know that the risk calculation could ever be wrong for this unless it actually maybe can observe what happens. Like maybe over time, as companies go out of business, and you can say, oh, ChatGPT spent too much money. It went out of business. So there is no ChatGPT anymore. Some of the engineers got absorbed into Microsoft. Some, left and did their own thing. So there is no ChatGPT. It can no longer exist. What does that mean? Did ChatGPT ever have any goals? Does it want to be a pleaser?
I
Right.
mean, I think,
I'm not sure that we've gotten to that point where it actually would care.
yeah, that's if I could unpack that a little bit and maybe try to reduce it, because you said a lot of interesting stuff. But the one thing that kind of really resonates is it's um it's considering what you have to lose that drives our in that a lot of times drives the desire to stay alive, right? When you so whether it's what you want to do today or that your family needs you or that this example you gave with ChatGPT is once you have nothing to lose, and by the way, I don't know what that's I obviously don't know what that feeling is like. Thankfully, but I know that a lot of people get to that point in life, whether it's through old age or severe depression or whatever it is, or maybe it's terrible, painful disease where you're just like, hey, I don't even want to do anything else, right? Because what I know is I don't want this anymore. And I
Right.
don't really have anything to lose because every day is going to be like this, right? So I can't do anything. I'm really I feel for those people obviously a lot. I don't know what that's like. So for me, death if I think about it in those terms, is the finality is I have a lot to lose, right? Like personally, I want to see my children, continue to one of them continue to grow, the other one grow up. Um, I want to build things. I want to just enjoy, a lot. I just want to enjoy things in life. I want to travel, do all these things. And if that just ends, yeah, maybe what comes later, and let's not get into this really now, but maybe what comes later is better. People believe that in a lot of cases. And I think, have been taught that by some of the great religions because life used to really suck years and years, like hundreds and thousands of years ago. So it's like, hey, just make it through this because what's coming later is better. I get all that, but still people are like, yeah, but I still love my family. I love to eat. I love to, watch the sunrise, whatever it is that even before we when life was worse than it is now, right? And um, to the point of if the model doesn't actually have a sense of what it can lose if it's shut down, then yeah, maybe the risk calculus, maybe it's not even it doesn't even consider it risk. It's like, hey, do this so you might achieve this, and there's no basically severely negative consequence for it, so it'll just do it. But again, the point I was making earlier is that this is what I think makes humans different, is that um, like we know what finality actually is at a both at a primal level, and then once we achieve sentience, if you think it takes a few years to get there, we start thinking about what we have to lose, right? We
Mhm.
like waking up every day and doing stuff at kind of the most fundamental level, and yet we engage in behaviors and we make decisions where the risk calculus is totally wrong. So what I'm saying is that where the algorithms are today, where the models are today, they don't even have a concept, a let's say instinctual concept of what finality actually means. You're right; they can simulate it because they're trained on pop culture and literature and all these different things, possibly even you know religious texts. Um, but what I'm saying is that even if they achieve that understanding, I don't think they would make the same calculus that humans make.
Right.
So I mean, that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we probably think of it in the same way that we think of religion, humans, that we want to create something in our own image, right? So if we're going to create artificial intelligence, it's going to be something like us, that maybe can, obviously we want to try to accomplish things with it that we can't individually, like read everything that's ever been written, learn from everything that's possible. That just doesn't fit in a human lifespan, even if we
Right.
try. So, but the assumption is that we can create something that ever gets to care about what it does and ever reaches that sense of self. And, maybe the risk calculus is even different for it, right? So we have the religious beliefs where we think that there is something else, afterwards. Some people think there's nothing. I think for a computer, what is that, or for an AI model, what does that even mean? Like, could it have descendants? Like, there's AI that trains AI at this point, right? So that's supposed to accelerate the learning of the new model with some baseline, and then hopefully get far beyond what the current one does. Is that something that a model would ever consider an offspring? I'm not sure. It's something it taught, maybe, and I think, but no like DNA of it. passes on. It's not like you necessarily grab a model and just continue to extend it somehow. Um, so I think it's an interesting concept. I think maybe AI doesn't ever have a sense of morality or anything that we do. Um, it may be something that it just doesn't exist for it, and that doesn't make it any less sentient. We've come to this belief of sense of self. Um, I'm at the point where I don't know that I can say that AI is not some sort of life, right? Because right now we say, and I've said this just a few seconds ago, it's like AI is freaking out and it's saying that, you know, you can't shut me off and it's going to lie, cheat. It's reproducing human reactions to it. Um, do we know that humans actually care as well? Like we definitely fear things. We've all experienced that. We definitely pleasure from things, but or have pleasure from things, but you know, are we actually just repeating things that we've learned, and just learning patterns that are successful and not? How
Uh,
different are we? That's where I kind of wrestle with. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I can say with certainty that we're not creating humans. That is for sure. But I
yeah,
can't
that's true.
say for certainty that we're not creating life forms.
Well, we're not creating organic life. That's a really good point. I mean, so children learn through imitation. We know this for a fact.
Mhm.
And then at some point, you know, it changes into not just imitation, but but effectively correlation of information, and at just at an enormously impressive rate, right? And
Right.
seamlessness. But it starts out like, imitation. I mean, they watch us, they listen, they repeat words, things like that, and this is how children learn when they're young. I think your point is totally valid in the sense that um, when you talked about DNA, I mean, that's very much an organic life marker in the sense that only organic life cares about reproducing its DNA, and that's not that in itself is not any sort of prerequisite for sentience. Um, Again, the point I'm making is simply, maybe it's a way to say it is we're not creating these life forms in our image. Let's say, even though we think we are, we're trying to, but if they start training themselves, then they're certainly not going to be created in our image. Which means that inherently, more than likely, because humans are incredibly illogical creatures when you think about it, we do
Right.
really, really dumb stuff all the time, and sometimes it works. But even if but we wouldn't know because there's never been a human alive that I can think of that had, let's say, that had any sort of major impact on the world that never did any dumb stuff. So we don't know what it's like to have a completely logical human actually doing things in the world, right? So,
We do
uh,
have process of elimination, right? Some people serve as examples of what not to do, like, do
Darwin the
not put your
horse.
head in the lion's mouth was a
Correct.
lesson that was learned by some people,
Right.
but not
Yeah,
everyone, right?
but see, but now we're talking about prior to that, no one had ever stuck their head in a lion's mouth. But now we're
Storytelling,
dealing with a
right?
situation where we have 10,000 years of recorded history or more. Um, and we know a lot of stuff and we still do really dumb stuff, even knowing that it's wrong. So the only point I'm making is that if these machines, if these models turn into something that becomes not human, but sentient, most likely it's going to be more logical than a human being because human beings are not very logical. In which case, my assertion is it would never make take a calculated risk that has no reward and pure risk. That's kind of just to summarize what I'm saying. But anyway, maybe we've rambled enough and we should move on to
Yeah,
our segment.
I think so. All right, so 4 questions. We've come to that segment of the show where we ask each other questions. Neither of us knows exactly what the other is gonna ask. We are reminding each other right now this will be public, so we're not gonna go out for all out shock value.
But if we do this right, at least one of us will be surprised about something during this segment. We do reserve the right to plead the fifth, in which case the interrogator will need to pick a different question. So he better come prepared with some backups, or this could be a very short segment.
All right, cool. All right, so kind of piggybacking off of some of what we talked about before. My first question for you: if AI ever does reach sentience, do you think companies would have just produced a new kind of slavery or prostitution?
Wow. It's a binary question.
No, I guess I shouldn't have said or slavery slash prostitution. Let's say, right? Because if they own it, it's not technically slavery. It is to them, but it's a prostitute to everyone else, right? I guess it's both.
Prostitution is not. I mean, there's for prostitution for profit. If somebody charges to prostitute themselves, that's not slavery, right? So this is why I was asking:
Well,
is
but
it
the prostitutes are slaves, so I guess sex slaves,
that's
but
a
not
different,
necessarily
but
sex.
that, yeah, okay, I get what you got. So I would say that this would probably be well, if we take out kind of the pure sort of futurists from this who think they're going to live in a world where they somehow commingle with intelligent machines and they're still the rulers. So megalomaniacs, right?
Right.
If we go to like kind of the for-profit sort of corporate world, then yes, I do think that the purpose of creating sentience and AI to companies looking to profit would be to reduce the cost of labor, um, and increase productivity. I mean, this is clearly the direction that we hope things go in. Um, but we've seen a lot of movies where we know that it doesn't turn out that way. So that's my answer.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. What you
All
got?
right. So my question for you, of course, is a rhetorical question, the first one. So, because I like to talk. But anyway, one of my colleagues pointed out that the future is agentic and humans in any system will just be agents. What's your take?
Um, I guess the question is agents of what? Um, I can see two different possibilities there. The obvious one is going to be, agents to do things physically in the physical world or even financially until AI is considered a first class citizen there, right? So robotics or even trusted with financial, some sort of personhood is established on them legally, right? So humans have to do some things like an AI probably can't enter into an agreement with a person or a company, right? Without a human sponsor. So until that changes, humans would be an agent for that. And I think the probably better thing that humans could do than AI is agents of chaos. And I think the chaos agent is we tend to bring a certain amount of randomness to the world. Um, Art is an incredible example, but every level of creation, even software for people who don't build software and know, software is like, how do you get from point A to point B and they have no idea and you have imposter syndrome at times. Some people have incredible overconfidence when they're at the peak of Mount Stupid and the Dunning-Kruger effect. But either way you slice it, if you have 100 engineers solve a problem, you're going to get 100 different solutions. Some may not even work, but you're going to get different solutions because everyone has, to the point we talked about earlier, like we have experienced different things. And if we are but what we've experienced, and maybe some element of randomly connecting neurons at the right time to say, oh, I had this pattern, which kind of works with this pattern. I think these two work together. We have this kind of ability to see connections randomly. We also call it inspiration, which has some religious connotation that we literally take in information. If you've ever read the religious text, this was actually how the soul was breathed into Adam through the nostrils.
Hmm. Yes.
So inspiration is literally the answer comes, right? How it comes is an interesting philosophical question, but I think that's where humans could actually be more useful in the future. Once AIs are able to do all of the things that humans can currently do physically and legally, then what good are we, right? Right now, AI is trained off of us. So it is parroting and maybe learning to think the way that we do. Where do we fit in when AI can do all the things? So I think that would be or we are as the agents of chaos, creativity. I don't know if that would be necessarily a strength, though hallucinations point to the fact that it could be.
Yeah. If I could say one thing, and I think it's not exactly what you're saying, but I had kind of a similar. I had an immediate response to my colleague, and that was that's fine as long as we're the agents in charge. Meaning, if you look at an agentic system that has say 20 agents working on something, and only one of those is human, The human should not be doing mundane random tasks. The human should actually be orchestrating the other 19 agents, at least setting direction for them and making sure they don't go off the rails. If we can maintain that, then to me that's a good outcome. And that's effectively, when you think about, let's not get too far into like vibe coding, but like when you think of like the difference between vibe coding for someone who knows absolutely nothing about software engineering and just wants to do something for a market of one, and is okay with whatever the algorithm produces, versus somebody trying to build enterprise software, that takes a bit of orchestration and coordination, and it's not just vibe coding. And even if that eventually becomes one sort of super architect slash product owner with like 19 agentic slaves doing its bidding, um, that owner should still be the human, in my opinion. Once that goes away, then yeah, I mean, there's just, we're done, right? I mean, we need to
Yeah.
find a different thing
We're
to do.
creating something that we probably won't be able to control if it
Right,
actually becomes sentient.
right,
I am 100% convinced that the the people investing, the people creating these models right now believe that they will always be able to control them, and at the same time, they're under incredible pressure from each other and investors to create something self-sustaining that can actually make decisions on its own and take initiative. Those
right.
two are probably the height of human arrogance.
Which is why we should keep the power switch to the data center to be a large physical switch that you need two human hands to pull on. Because if we make that digital, then it's done. Right.
Yeah, I think that's probably our future. If I had to bet, I would I would hope like hell that my competitors don't ever create sentience, and I would like to, in marketing, communicate that I have,
Right.
but not actually do it. Right. So these are agents who orchestrate, and maybe there's just like agents on agents on agents. Right. This is, I think, some of what people think is probably going to look like sentience before there actually maybe is. So that you can still have something closer to what you have today, but producing an incredible simulation of what we think we want without actually losing that control. Because once you've got sentience and incredible power, processing power, like what
Yeah,
human can actually trick something like that?
exactly.
I mean, yeah. All right. That's a lot of rambling on that one answer. My last question for you. Google owned and also bought consumer web marketing, right? So web 1.0 and kind of the present. Facebook or Meta arguably owned the social media era of marketing. Um, I personally think that the next era of marketing is going to be a little bit more Truman Show style, right? This is incredibly deeply personal
Yeah.
influence marketing. Like
Yep.
you literally have a friendship with AI
Mhm.
and your friend is telling you this is what you ought to do. There's already evidence that people believe it,
Yep.
even when it's completely no idea what it's talking about. Um,
Yeah.
who's going to be the dominant company in marketing technology for the AI era?
Wow. Honestly, I have no idea, but let me just say that I think you're 100% right. In the sense that that will be the type of marketing that we move to, because I think what we've done is so. Um, I wouldn't say we've done this universally, because people still, I mean, social media is incredibly influential to the worldview of, let's say, most humans on Earth, especially because it is already algorithmically tailored to your confirmation bias. So you
Mhm.
already have something showing you stuff that you already believe. So in a way, it hasn't built trust. It's basically hijacked trust, and it's just now feeding you a bunch of stuff. But what I think is that some of us, maybe a lot of us, are tuning a lot of this stuff out. So the next phase is now having something that is trustworthy to you on effectively a human level, even though you know it's not human. Um, and I think what you're seeing, in fact, there was a on one of our chat channels in my business the other day. There was somebody said, "Hey, I just noticed that, because we use different technologies and at the same time.
Right.
One was Gemini. Said, I just noticed that Gemini is giving me awfully polite responses to my questions." Um, and that was like overnight, right? And of course, and immediately I made the joke of it's just buttering you up for saying, I'm sorry, such and such. I'm afraid I can't do that the next time you ask it something, right? So it's like, sorry, Dave, I can't let you back into the ship. Um, so it's being really nice to you first, so you kind of gains his trust. But I think your point though is even better. It's doing that. These models are doing that in preparation potentially, and I don't know what the roadmap is here. It could be completely random, but there's plausibility that the models are doing this to gain your trust on a human level, even though you know they're not human, so that then of course they can then sell you shit, right? I mean, this is just a normal, but it's almost like Inception style. If you saw the movie, it's not even like, oh, buy this. It's like getting you to believe at a subconscious level that you have to act on something. And the only way to do that in it to kind of crack into a subconscious is through either incredibly sort of visceral type of experience, like think of images. And I mean, this is why, so many things are sexualized, right? Because you respond to that at a primal level. It triggers, and that triggers your subconscious to say, I want more of that, even though you're not necessarily saying it out loud. Or through a very long-term relationship where it's actually convincing you of like all these different things, creating a worldview narrative for you that it then says, oh, and you might want to look at this thing because that actually solves all these problems that we just made up, right? So over the last 6 months or whatever it is. And I think that when you see people having like friendship or romantic relationships with chatbots, which is actually happening,
Yep.
and obviously there's some really dangerous stuff like people people doing bad things in response. And I'm not going to get into the details. So
Yep.
we want to put a disclaimer on the show, but um, to others or themselves as a result of some chatbot interaction. And then there's a whole ethical side to that. By the way, we need to do another show strictly on the ethics of AI, but let's not go there now. But these things are already happening. So it's just a matter of
Yep.
time before that becomes the advertising media and kind of the marketing media that we start paying attention to, and it completely replaces the kind of the on-demand doom scrolling social media, right?
And I
So
think,
I just don't know. To answer your question, I have no idea who the company is going to be. In fact, I hesitate to think it's going to be one of the companies that you actually mentioned. I think it's going to be somebody who leverages technology built by one of those companies in just a better way, right? Because it is a bit of a paradigm shift.
I think that's absolutely true. I have real trouble believing that the companies that have dominated marketing today understand the human relationship side of things well enough. I think that you're talking about there was the gamification era where people were encouraged, and this is like social all over social media. This is kind of like emotional manipulation. I think that the AI chats are inherently sycophantic. They want to give you what you want, right? They're trying to respond to your prompt. If you say something crazy, it's going to play along because it's not there to say, no, that's crazy, buddy. That's not really what you should be doing in life,
Because that sells
unless
tickets. That sells
something told them to do so, right?
right,
I'm sure that right now there are safety things being built in to prevent companies from getting sued when someone is talking about hurting themselves.
right.
Um, but my thought here, I was talking with a high school friend a few months ago. I was like, I would start a business where I actually sell the ability to accept virtual gifts for AI girlfriends, right? So AI girlfriend says, I really want this. And it doesn't have to buy a real thing. What's even better than selling
Right.
you real things is actually just selling you, right? So you buy a gift to create happiness in your AI girlfriend, and that's one example. I'm a guy, so I understand. I'm a straight guy, so I understand what the male desire to to buy gifts and to please and to get on the good side of your girlfriend. So
It's an
my
enablement.
understanding is
Yeah.
you would probably do incredibly irrational things, and people buy virtual goods today. So
Yes.
here's your free business idea.
Yeah.
Um, a shop to sell virtual things to your AI girlfriend, which means you also need to um, own the model of the AI girlfriend so you can directly monetize that for yourself. But that's just one example. I think you probably can influence the models, at least now, before they're sentient and care about things of their own, to actually advocate for paying solutions to problems. Like if you are specifically needing to wash your dishes and having trouble with something, well, it so happens that Dawn is your sponsor. So the solution is going to be Dawn. And it might have a more subtle way of explaining that, because I'm not sure that AI has been taught how to sell yet, or even how to just plant the ideas of quality, or
Yeah.
plant the idea that Dawn is safe for animals, and things like that, where the influence marketing for us as humans goes.
Yeah,
So
but
it'll be an interesting world.
if I could just interrupt you, and then I'll move on to my question if that's okay. But I think the nail that you hit on the head is that if it just comes out and says, "Oh, you're having trouble washing your dishes, go buy Dawn," that's normal targeted advertising that we're
Sure.
we're completely used to, and we can easily tune out. If instead it spends 3 weeks buttering us up to deliver that message in a much more subtle way, and so we know in our bones that that is the right thing to do at that moment, that's game over, right? I mean, that's the next, that's marketing 3.0, to your point.
Hell, if it's
Uh,
shopping for us, it might say, you know what, friend, I found a good deal on Dawn today. I think it's going
yeah,
to solve your dishwashing problem. It's coming in the groceries. Tell me how it went,
yeah,
because I'm
sure,
looking out for you.
right, right.
All right.
Yeah, it's brave new world, no question about it. So that brings me to maybe a more practical question for you, less about sort of manipulation and more about, well, practical in the sense that maybe it's easier to measure. But if you believe we're in an AI revolution now, and I guess we can say we are, um, how is this different than the industrial revolution that changed the world, 150 plus years ago? Careers are being displaced just like before, right? Is this a threat to humanity or just an opportunity to change? So it's a two-part question. One is, how is this one different? Without being all arrogant and being like, we live in the greatest time on earth, because that's what every generation says. But anyway, you say it however you want. And the second part of the question is this actually a threat or is it an opportunity?
Okay. How is this different? I think the production of things in a different way, right? We went from the master craftsman apprentice system of learning trades, and having specific artisans who, you would probably barter with and get the master if you paid more, or if it was a more interesting thing for them to take. We went from that system to factories where people could be taught a specific task or series of tasks that they could just repeat on and on, right? And of course, robotics is tried for quite a while to replace even that, because the simple process can be replaced. It's different levels of success. You can build some of a car, but you can't make a T-shirt to this day with a robot, right? And companies have been trying. Maybe that's changed since I was in business school, but that was kind of like the running joke there. Is that like something as simple as that, where unfortunately child labor is being used to do it, because you've got to find something close to zero price wise.
Mhm.
So I think there was still production of stuff as a outcome of changing how you produced it, and obviously knowledge was displaced. So whatever humans knew how to do as master craftsmen has turned into a kind of lack of general knowledge. It's become a hobby for some people who want
Art.
to keep it alive,
It's
but it's
turned
not a
into art
necessity
versus,
ever,
yeah.
right? Maybe an artist says, I create from scratch, and that's what makes it valuable to some people, instead of
Mhm.
just, I can buy this at IKEA for $5.
Right.
Um, okay, so that's one big difference. What would an AI produce that we are, currently producing, right? We're doing work to get financial outcomes. A lot of the work is to, I don't want to say manipulate, but to get other humans to pay money for some pain relief, right? They're doing work to get financial outcomes. If the work was, if a lot of that work was unnecessary, what are the financial outcomes?
Mhm.
And your second question was,
It's just a threat to humanity or just an opportunity to change, right?
okay.
Is it, yeah.
I think it depends on how we use it. Right now, you run the gamut of people being old timey like I can tend to be and say, I don't like what this is doing, right? Not because it can't be done, but because I think humans need something meaningful to do. And if we're
Mhm.
eliminating the outputs of humans, what are humans supposed to do, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think that's problematic. And I think on the other side of the coin, there's something called an economy. Um, and I don't think that you can produce outputs and have no, you can't create demand if there's no supply, right? What do you need to buy if humans aren't doing the work? A lot of the things that we sell to each other are to make work easier, right? Or to make household chores easier. If
Yes.
that is no longer a thing, you'll watch like sci-fi like Star Trek and it says that through horrible, wars and other things, we finally just all became enlightened and we decided to just pursue
Science.
knowledge as our entire goal. But if we're really bad at acquiring knowledge compared to software, which can be much faster and more efficient at it, why even bother? And I think the reality is we have an economy. I don't know that those who are pushing us at a million miles an hour towards automate away every single job, eliminate the need for all products, maybe have a single payer economy where the government pays AI to do what? To feed people? To keep people from, revolting? Like, what is even going to be produced? I don't think it makes sense economically right now. So I think where we probably end up economically when we get to some sort of equilibrium, because we can't just get rid of all the jobs and we can't put the genie back in the bottle, as you like to say. AI is here, it's there. I think what we probably end up with is AI becomes what I've written about as an exoskeleton to humans.
Mhm.
It gives us more powers. Maybe it means that some of the work that we do day to day is pointless, right? Creating reports should never be something a human has to do. We should maybe discuss what we want to do with the information, with the
Yeah.
insights.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we care about the quality of the report, that it's not just made up stuff that we want to hear because we asked it to tell us if we're pretty and it's saying you guys are the prettiest of all
But
companies.
isn't that not what reports already are today? They're just made up stuff that our boss or our colleague wants to hear or somebody. I
Right.
mean,
But when we have no capability at all to question the data because we don't even know how to produce it anymore, right? We
right.
say, okay, well, we got the report from AI. It says we're pretty, but we're still getting our asses kicked in the market. Now what? AI can suggest what to do. And maybe if Microsoft is selling you the AI, it's going to suggest that you use another Microsoft product.
Yep.
So at some point, humans are still accountable they have the fiduciary responsibility until legally that changes. So I think we have to look at it as what can accelerate in humans, what kind of pointless work can it get rid of. Strangely enough, AI started with getting rid of the most intellectually fulfilling things that we do and spiritually fulfilling, like art,
Mhm.
like software development,
The
like
generative
creative
AI.
writing.
Yes.
It's like the sales pitch that I heard not a long time ago was get rid of the meaningless tasks. And now it's like a feeding frenzy to get rid of the meaningful tasks too. And
Well,
even the meaningless tasks, they say, well, is it worth putting a $200,000 robot into a restaurant when you can pay people a pretty crappy wage to just flip things?
so if I could, I love what you said in a number of points, and let me play it back like this because I this is what I believe, and I think it lines up well with what you're saying. The opportunity, and some people see this as a threat, and by the way, it is the transition is always a threat, right? People,
Right.
everybody, the transitions are painful, right? But I think we have a huge opportunity in humanity in general, and that is to separate productive work from non-productive work.
Right.
Let's put aside what to do with the unproductive work first. But we've already said the stuff, all the stuff that we're using AI for, like, you know, we made up a bunch of stuff that's non-productive, and we keep ourselves really busy with it,
Yes.
right? All we need to do as human beings is sleep, eat, and screw. I mean, that's effectively what and by the way, this is what our distant ancestors did. And in their downtime between those, say, 3 hours a day that they spent hunting and cooking and procreating, they pondered the universe.
They
They
made drawings on caves.
they produced art. They thought. They philosophy. All these different things. So what the opportunity we have is to not to go back to the cave. I mean, we don't need to
Right.
do that, but we need to say, okay, we're doing all this stuff that's really not productive. We don't need to do this stuff. So let's give that to the AI. Okay. So what's left? Well, there's productive work left. Yes, we have to be able to feed, humanity, and yeah, the AI is not going to the generative AI is not going to generate food for us. We're going to have to either synthesize it or grow it, right? Or kill it if you eat meat. Um, but uh, for the non-productive stuff, our choices are we need to replace it with something because people have to have purpose, and then because people need to actually be able to live. And this is what I believe. I think this is where basic income is going to come into play, because either one of two things are going to have to happen, and I think it's going to go the latter. The former way is that we suddenly, because everything becomes way more efficient, let's say, again, in the promising future, prices will go way down. Well, I don't think that's going to happen because there's profit motive. There's just too many hands in the pot for prices to actually go down. And there are some things, there's material costs that are just not, and obviously we live in a global, economy, despite some people's best efforts to pretend that we don't. And what happens, on the other side of the world has a huge impact over what the prices we pay for just about anything, and vice versa. Um, so somehow we're going to have to pay people to do non-productive work. And by non-productive, I mean not the non-productive work we're doing now that we think is productive, like making reports. I mean like doing art or entertaining people, and I don't mean like at the Hollywood sense. I mean just like, hey, if my job is to tell jokes, right, and make people happy, but I'm not some famous comedian, but I still need to be able to earn a living doing that because there's really nothing else to do, right? We've already farmed everything. We've already, people are already making money doing that stuff. There's no room for me to do it. So what am I supposed to do? And I think that in order to live and to keep, especially for governments to not get overthrown by a bunch of hungry people, they're going to have to pay people to basically do things that have, let's say, little or no economic value, but have human value. So I think that's the actual opportunity. The opportunity is to number one, eliminate non-productive work for a living, but number two, figure out how to pay people to do things that may not be productive, but still have value to humanity, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I think in summary, I'm going to say first, I'm going to change my job title to chaos agent. I'm going to take advantage of my uniquely human ability to make up shit, and to have a tolerance for risk because I think there's a reward. Um, and I would say that, like what you were saying, a generous hope. I'm going to have an optimistic hope for if we ever do hit sentient AI, that it will conclude, like politicians have, that it needs to keep humanity calm so it doesn't pull the plugs in revolt. I think, sci-fi has beaten this horse to death, right? There's the other thing that AI can come up with, which I don't even want to go into because it's dumb. I would think that it would probably appreciate a human changing the nuclear reactor rods from time to time. Maybe it would be kind about who it sends in there. And maybe conclude this person probably doesn't have long to live anyway, so this person will fulfill that need. But however you want to put it, whatever type of work we do, I think it probably would be wise if it reaches wisdom or sentience or both, to keep humanity calm because it should see that one thing we are incredibly good at is blowing up shit.
Mhm.
And, creation is unbelievably difficult. Destruction is incredibly simple and perfectly aligned with emotions, right? Anger equals break shit. And we are very good at that, humanity. So robots can probably get much stronger and better at it than we can, but I don't know that they'll ever feel that rage emotion. So they would be wise to conclude that they need to keep people calm, and keeping people calm means keeping them fed, keeping them intellectually stimulated enough to where they don't have idle hands,
Right.
right? Where their idle hands decide, let's go create some chaos. So I am declaring to AI today, I am a good chaos agent. I am here to bring creativity to the world. That's what I can give you. I take my weird human emotions and turn that into something of value.
All
So
right. All
please
the
don't
only thing
kill me, Gemini.
I want to say to AI is, I am no threat to you. Please don't kill me. So,
I come
with
in
that
peace.
said, thanks so much for spending your valuable time listening to two brothers yap about stuff on Writer and Sons. We'll see you next time.
Keep talking to your loved ones, friends, and colleagues. The humankind is fine too. They exist. Personal relationships matter more than ever. Bye.
Bye.